Hey guys, this is ARC the Cartoon Master, and welcome to my first review. So, what is today's subject? Yes, the buzz on Maggie, that largely unheard of Disney Channel cartoon from the mid-2000s that somehow made up a large chunk of my childhood. And now that it's the show's 15th anniversary, let's celebrate by talking about this show and analysing it in greater depth. So, what is it about? Well, it takes place in a small town called Sticky Feet, and yeah, that's actually what they call it on the show, in the middle of a garbage dump, which is populated by anthropomorphic flies and other insects, and the buildings are all made from human garbage. It's kinda like the city from A Bug's Life. The protagonist of the series is a preteen girl fly named Maggie Pesky, voiced by then newcomer Jessica DeChico, who's probably best known for voicing Flame Princess from Adventure Time, but she also voices two of the sisters, Lynn and Lucy, on The Loud House. But anyway, Maggie's pretty much your typical average preteen girl. She goes to school, she hangs out with her friends, and she has hopes and dreams of making it big in the real world. She's also free-spirited, opportunistic, can be a bit selfish at times, but still has a good heart, and she dreams of becoming a badass rock musician. As with several kids shows, most episodes would typically stick to a formula. Maggie faces a problem in her day-to-day life, whether it be getting stuck watching her younger brother, wanting to meet her favourite rock musician, having to work on a school assignment over the school holidays, etc. And so she thinks up a clever scheme to help her get through the easy way, such as taking her brother with her, doing volunteer work, or, cheating on the assignment. However, as she follows through with her plan, she realises she's only making the situation worse for herself, and for others, as comedic slapstick hijinks ensue. Nevertheless, Maggie does realise her mistake in the end, from which a valuable lesson is learned. It's a relatively basic premise, but it works, especially with the way it's set up, and all the fun, clever gags they can squeeze out of a world of anthropomorphic insects. Even though there are some rather lame puns in there, I'm not gonna lie.
Cirque du Soleil!
What are you doing with my bugsketball?
Moldslock or Bishka Bobs?
I remember my first diorama, the Gettysburg Address.
You let him see the last Samurai?
It is my way.
Or the flyway!
So anyway, let's talk about the characters. First, there's Maggie, of course. She's a young girl fly, aged roughly 12 or 13, who can't stand the hard-working, conformist society she lives in, and instead just prefers to do her own thing and get through life the easy way. Man, she'd hate to live in Denmark. She's a proficient musician, she plays the double neck guitar, and she dreams of becoming a famous rock star. Whenever she sees an opportunity to get what she wants, she'll go to whatever lengths she deems necessary to get it, even if it means putting her selfish needs before those of others. What I really like about the character of Maggie Pesky is just how creative, energetic, and ambitious she is. She's not afraid to express herself, and she constantly persists to achieve her goals. As a kid, I really admired her as a role model, and I could relate to her struggle of wanting to rebel against social norms and just go at one's pace, etc. But looking at her now, yeah, she does seem to be a bit self-centered most of the time. But hey, it's all part of what makes her identifiable. She isn't a Mary Sue who's all around perfect. She does make mistakes. She acts before thinking. She doesn't always know what's best for her or her peers. And let's face it, a lot of us do go through that phase in our lives, when we want to rebel against society, and hopefully we learn from our mistakes. It doesn't make her a terrible person, it just means she's still young and she doesn't understand yet how the world works. Granted, there are a few episodes, particularly towards the end of the show's first and only season, where Maggie went a tad too far with her egoism, and even came across as downright immature at times, and I'm not gonna lie, I do see where most of the hate for this show and this character comes from. But personally, I just see that as the writers taking risks as to how far they could push Maggie's ego, but losing sight of what made her such a charming and relatable character. Maggie lives in an old milk carton with her immediate family. Her older brother, Aldrin, her younger brother, Pupae, her baby sister, Bella, and their parents, Chauncey and Frieda. Aldrin is just kinda your typical sporty jock who plays football. Very full of himself and, all of that stuff. He would often serve as a rival to his younger sister, Maggie, but at times he shows he does care about her as a sibling.
Well, at least my little sister got the scooter she wanted.
Personally, I never really liked Aldrin, as his cocky attitude and massive ego, especially regarding his sports achievements, would often get on my nerves. He's kinda like Sonic the Hedgehog if he sucked out all the charm and likability. But as far as the typical older sibling who bickers with the main character younger sibling but still loves them deep down goes, he manages to pull it off okay, I guess. And plus, you might recognize that voice from somewhere.
The world belongs to the strong, Mags, and those ants lift 50 times their own weight. No, back when I was Zeb's favorite, it was my hat. Oh, we can stay home. I don't mind. It's Quitterella, back from the ball.
That's right, it's David Kaufman, or Kaufman, I don't know how you say it. The voice of none other than Danny Phantom.
Get behind me! I'm going ghost! I command you to go away!
He also voiced Jimmy Olsen on Superman the Animated Series, and Marty McFly on the animated series Back to the Future, but I'm getting off topic here. Pupae is the younger brother of Maggie and Aldrin, and he's sort of the typical innocent younger sibling character who can be annoying at times, but he's got a good heart, and is often the voice of reason in most of his appearances, usually calling out Maggie for her callous behaviour.
I thought Mom and Dad said you couldn't have Raina over.
In many ways, he's a typical preteen boy. He's into sports like his older brother, even if he's not as good at them. He likes to play video games, and he aspires to become an astronaut when he's older. However, he also has a bit of a girly streak and likes to watch princess movies. Which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with. Hell, I used to watch this show when I was younger. But it does make me think the creator, Dave Polsky, yeah, that one, might have based Maggie on his younger self and Pupae on his younger sister, as the latter does kind of remind me of a male version of Molly from Jakers. Does anyone remember that show about the young pig boy living in Ireland? Maybe I should review that show at some point. And speaking of cartoon pigs, Pupae has kind of a weird sounding voice that sounds like a cross between Piglet and Miss Piggy.
It's nice quality time for the whole family, right, Maggie? Forget it. This isn't fun anymore. I counted them myself. Prancing Princess doll, now available in pink, off pink, and ultra pink. Collect all three. I seem to have sewn myself to the chair.
This is because, for some reason, they cast a grown-ass man, namely Tom Adcox Hernandez, the voice of Clarion the Witch Boy.
Pack off, pack again. Clarion is chaos personified. He cannot be constipated.
Instead of a woman like they normally do for young boy characters, or even an actual young boy like certain other shows. So naturally he has to use his falsetto voice in order to pull it off. And while I personally think he does it okay, I can understand if you find the voice annoying. So overall, I like the character of Pupae. He's sweet, innocent, serves as a good foil to Maggie's more reckless, impulsive attitude. And plus, how can you not envy the optimism of someone who thinks it's cool to work at a burger joint?
Yeah, and look at that cool paper hat he gets to wear.
And then you have Bella, the baby of the family, voiced by Tara Strong doing her Dill voice from Rugrats.
What is it, Bella? Is it too hot? Too cold? Fussy tummy? Is the tummy fussy?
She pretty much does nothing, as babies typically do, and only 2 episodes have her as the focus, where either she gets in the way of Maggie's fun, or Maggie tries to use Bella for advantage. Plus the occasional gag about her not having legs because, well, she's a maggot, so what do you expect? So instead of crawling like a human baby, she moves around by hopping like the characters from VeggieTales, or that weird kangaroo snail from The Future is Wild. But usually Bella only appears at the family dining table and doesn't really add much to the show, so I don't really know what to make of her. She's basically Gary from SpongeBob, but, you know, a baby instead of a pet. The parents consist of Chauncey, voiced by Brian Doyle Murray, who you may remember as the Flying Dutchman and Captain Knuckles.
What do you want, Maggie? Have you seen Maggie? We ordered a while ago. If I had a nickel for every time someone asked me that, I'd, have a nickel.
And Frieda, voiced by Susan Tolsky, who was actually 62 when she voiced this apparently 30-something year character.
Maggie, you are all a part of this family, and families pitch in. Do you really do your chores just to get paid? All you need are the 3 P's. Posture, politeness, and presentation. After that, it's just... Maggie?
But then again, we also live in a world where 50-year-old Alan Rickman played 30-year-old Snape. And the reverse is arguably more common, so I guess anything is possible. Frieda is very much a typical cartoon mum and housewife. She's pretty, sweet, cares for her children, but can be strict and stern when she needs to be. Some of you might take issue with her falling into the traditional gender role of the homemaker and stay-at-home mother, but if my theory that Maggie and her siblings are based on Dave Polsky and his family is correct, then Frieda is most likely based on his mother, which would mean she lived at a time when this was common for women, so I guess it only makes sense. Not to mention, there are still young women today who take on the role of the housewife, and all power to them. And I'm sure we can all be thankful that at least her daughter Maggie is more ambitious and outgoing. The dad, Chauncey, is more interesting to talk about in my opinion. And no, it's not because he's the man, well, not directly anyway, it's because of how he's written. Anyway, for the most part, he's pretty much there just to be the typical tween sitcom dad who won't let his daughter have her fun, but he also has some quirks that make him stand out. For one thing, he's a bit of a nerd and a real history buff, and while we never see his current day job, he has a history of running his own businesses, such as farming and snow plowing, though we never see just how successful he was in the long run. And what I like about this character is that he's not the typical bumbling dad we see on shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy, or Fairly Odd Parents. He is a competent father who listens to his children, but can go hard on them when they've done wrong. How refreshing is that? Like, yeah, we've had characters like Henry from Punky Brewster, but they usually predate The Simpsons, and only recently have they seen a major comeback with Steven Universe's dad and Marinette's dad, just to name examples. So instead, most of the humour with this character comes from how intelligently weird he is, such as bribing his daughter with cash to get good grades, storing his old journal behind an Edna Mode-style security system, and even befriending Maggie's teacher over their mutual love for history, much to her annoyance. However, the overall parenting skills of these two is a bit shaky, to put it mildly. There are some episodes where they flat out don't care for their children, or they do, but in some bizarre way that defies basic common sense. But usually they tend to act as one two-headed idiot in these episodes, so it's hard to blame this character flaw on them individually. Rather, it's more when the story calls for them to behave like that the episode tends to fall apart. It's complicated. So that's the main family for you. Now let's talk about the supporting cast. First you have Raina Cartflight, voiced by Cree Summer. She's Maggie's best friend, and the token sassy black character on the show, and much like Pupae, she serves as a voice of reason on the show, calling out Maggie whenever her plans go too far, though sometimes she can be just as easily suckered in.
Fly friend, Bug Spit totally has it out for you. If you turn in a project that's even slightly above average, he's gonna know you didn't do it. But Maggie, that is stooping to Don's level. Haven't you ever heard the old saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right?
But Raina, there's another saying. 1 wrong that fixes another wrong restores balance to the universe.
Don't know that one.
But otherwise, she and Maggie do typical girly things, such as talking about boys, shopping at the mall, having sleepovers, etc. And she's a likeable character in my opinion, if you can get past the racial stereotyping. But if not, well, at least newer shows have better black girl characters. Dawn Swatworthy is the Queen Bee, or Queen Fly I should say, at Buzzdale Academy, and Maggie's long-term arch-rival. So basically, she's every alpha bitch character you've ever seen. Margot Kramer, Nanette Manoir, Angela Smith, Myrtle Evans, Jemae King, Pacifica Northwest, Chloe Bourgeois, Harvey Street's Frou Frou and Zoe and Chevron. God, you think that's enough alpha bitches, Harvey Street? And even male characters like Draco Malfoy, William Fancy Son, and I guess Stingy from Lazy Town? If you're familiar with those characters, then you know exactly what this character is like. She's egotistical, she's spoiled and rich. There's just nothing likable about her, and they don't really do anything new with this character. But what saves the character for me is Tara Strong's performance. She just sounds so passive-aggressive in how she puts on the facade of a sweet, innocent girl when she's really a cold-hearted bastard who looks down on others. Like, how can you not love to hate her?
Principal Pestrup, don't you think it's just a teensy bit unfair leading everyone to believe they could actually sell more scumbites than me? Yes, your principalness, sir? Not that I know of, sir. Good luck. Check out my pre-sales. Ooh, that's 500 cases ordered already. The The board would never let you into the ball. I'm only trying to save you the pain of that rejection.
Just be grateful that Hilda doesn't have an alpha bitch, and let's just move on. And then there's the staff at Buzzdale Academy, the school attended by most of the kid characters on the show. You have Mrs. Wingston, who's just kind of a typical stick-in-the-mud hard-ass teacher, plus her design seems to rip off Kyle's mum from South Park. And then there's Mr. Bugspit, the stuffy British teacher who has it out for Maggie's antics. The librarian is a typical strict librarian, and the lunch lady is just a stereotypical gross lunch lady. But then there's Principal Pestrip, voiced by Jeff Bennett. He's easily one of the funniest characters on the show. He tries to be a reasonable authority figure who just runs the school with an iron fist, but he's also a bit of a cloud cuckoo lander, showing favouritism towards certain students, most notably Dawn and Aldrin, and has a bit of a friendly rivalry with our main star, trying to pin her down for her schemes, but occasionally working with her for his own personal gain.
I'll find your secret spitballer, your gumwater, all of them.
And Jeff Bennett's performance nails it perfectly. He sounds both stern and goofy at the same time, and he sort of reminds me of Mr. Nezza from VeggieTales. He just knocks it out of the park.
Our faculty lounge is gonna be jamming! Looks like we'll be watching that big screen TV from a hot tub, baby. And who do you expect me to believe, huh? You, who have every reason to lie to me? Or this innocent little manila folder? You wouldn't lie to me, would you? No way, Mr. P, never! Oh.
The rest of the characters are mostly just the other students at Buzzdale, such as Jim Short's kid who has a crush on Dawn, the nerdy twin beetles Eugene and Wendell, Melvin the stink bug, the shy and timid Maria Monarch, and literal ant bully Snap, just to name a few. There are also quite a few one-off characters, such as the snooty French termite chef, a swarm of hungry, albeit friendly locusts, a Beatles parody that aren't even Beatles, I'm surprised they didn't use the obvious pun, and a neurotic stag beetle that has the hots for Raina. Don't worry, it's a lot less creepy in context. I'll discuss them more when I review the individual episodes, but for now, I'll just say they're fine for the one-dimensional archetypes they are. And in a sense, they're almost affectionate parodies of the archetypes. The show does get good mileage, or should I say footage, out of the various jokes that can be made based on what types of insects they are, and most of the time, they do get good laughs.
Why you stinging yourself? Why you stinging yourself?